honestly one of the most anticipated games to be releasing. With little to no information about the game from Capcom, fans have to rely on rumors to learn about the game. And one of the rumors that I'm sure everyone who is watching this video have heard is that Leon and Jill will be the protagonists of this game. There is something that we all can agree on, that the main antagonist is just as important as the protagonist. So who is the antagonist of Resident Evil 9? After doing a little bit of digging, not really, actually none at all, I found the Resident Evil 9 story will be focused on the Connections, the group that with the help of Mother Miranda created Evelyn, and the people that Mia Winters worked for. Then I found that the main antagonist will be a man named Mr. Simon. So who the hell is Mr. Simon? I came up with 3 possible answers. The first one is actually a really boring answer. I just followed the articles that said Mr. Simon is a new character who will be introduced in Resident Evil 9, and he is the leader of the Connections. The second one is actually why this entire video was made, and the third one is kind of a joke, but I'm still putting it as a possibility. So what is the second possibility? The second possibility is I think that Mr. Simon is an alias used by another character. So who is that character? I think the person that is using that alias is Brandon Bailey. Now if you're asking yourself who is Brandon Bailey, I'm gonna start off with getting the obvious out of the way. Brandon Bailey is the reason why this entire video was made. And also, Brandon Bailey is a very important character to Resident Evil as a whole. One of the things that makes him so important to Resident Evil is that he is the founder of the Connections. Before I go any further, I want to talk a little more about this character's history, so you can understand why he's so important to Resident Evil's story, other than the fact that he is the founder of the Connections. Brandon was born sometime in the 1940s, and he would attend a Swiss college sometime in mid-1960s. There he would become a protege of Dr. James Marcus, who was a part of a particular eugenics group. Other members of that group were Dr. Beardsley, Dr. Henry, just Henry, Dr. Edward Ashford, and of course, Dr. Oswald E. Spencer. And Bailey would become a member of this eugenics group around the same time as Dr. Edward Ashford's son, Alexander Ashford. In 1996, Brandon Bailey would go on an expedition to Africa with his mentor and Oswald E. Spencer. They were trying to acquire the flower Stairway of the Sun, or as common folk know it, the source of the progenitor virus. The flower was known to grant strength or kill those who consumed it. And Dr. James Marcus and Oswald E. Spencer believed that the flower contained a virus, and it was the virus who either granted strength or killed those who were infected, and the way to get infected was by consuming the flower. They were able to retrieve the flower, and after examining it, they found the virus, and the virus was dubbed the progenitor virus. They also succeeded in acquiring some seeds, and they returned to Europe with the seeds and samples of the virus. After returning to the university's laboratory, Marcus and Bailey would begin their research on the new virus, and since they had the seeds, they began to grow the flower at the university. However, the flowers that were grown in Europe did not possess the virus. They didn't realize that the flowers needed a specific environment to produce the virus. That wasn't the only problem. Because of the Nidipaya people, the environment where they knew the flower could produce the virus wasn't a great place for a facility because the Nidipaya people would attack. So for now, they would just have to work on the samples that they were able to retrieve in Africa. Not long after beginning their research on the virus, a new problem would occur. Dr. James Marcus would be fired from the university, and now they aren't able to work at the university's laboratory. Oswald E. Spencer then came with a solution for one of their problems. He gave them the opportunity to do their research at his estate. However, the British noblemen who helped fund this project and did their own research on the progenitor virus weren't that rich. So in 1967, Earl Spencer made plans to form Umbrella, the pharmaceutical company. He brought the idea to 5th Earl Ashford and Dr. James Marcus, and in 1968, Umbrella was formed. But Marcus wasn't that interested in business, and he continued his research with Bailey. Realizing that their research isn't going to get anywhere if they don't get more samples, Bailey and Marcus decided to go back to Africa. But as I mentioned earlier, this is a horrible place for research. Spencer then reminds everyone that he is a British nobleman born in the early 20th century by kicking the Nidipaya people off of their land. But before Bailey and Marcus could go to Africa, Spencer requests that Marcus go to Raccoon to become Umbrella's new training facility director. So Marcus would head to Raccoon, and Bailey would become the director of the facility in Africa. The facility will be placed inside of the cave where the flower was grown, and it will be responsible for supplying every Umbrella facility with the progenitor virus. In 1988, Bailey will receive news of Marcus's death, and Bailey's entire world will be shattered. Marcus was the reason he was doing all of this. Bailey would continue to supply the rest of the Umbrella facilities with the progenitor virus, and in 1998, after hearing that he is out of a job, Bailey still didn't care. But refusing to retire, Bailey would get in contact with friends that he made in Africa, and the connections would be born. Before I go on to why I think Bailey is using this alias, I want to say a few things. If you don't want to hear this, you can skip to this timestamp. I mentioned this in my Wesker video as somewhat of a joke. It was a joke, okay? It was actually a joke in that video. But in this one, it's not a joke, it is 100% serious. I think Resident Evil writers have a serious problem with everyone trying to write their own goddamn thing, okay? Like, please stick to the fucking script. In Resident Evil 5, Bailey's entire existence is Marcus, okay? He is Marcus' protege. His world breaks when Marcus has died. Not only that, he is written to be dead in Resident Evil 5, okay? But in Resident Evil Village, no. Bailey was also Spencer's right-hand man, and he didn't leave Umbrella because he was out of a job. No, he left Umbrella because him and Spencer had a little dispute. And you know how it's written that Bailey is dead? No, fuck that. Bailey is actually not dead. His status is unknown, okay? So when seeing this, I thought in my head that maybe they are two different people. But no, both of them were the director of the same fucking facility. So they are the same person with the same first name and the same last name. So trying to figure out how to tell this story isn't that easy because you have to figure out what things to leave out. And the thing that makes me even more mad when trying to research Bailey, I found a researcher that could have easily took his place as founder of the Connections. You know who that researcher's name? The researcher's name is Jenny K. She doesn't even have a last name, it's just K. But she was also a senior member in Umbrella with clearance level 10. Apparently, she had a higher clearance level than fucking Brandon Bailey. So if you want to take a character who was mentioned in the previous game, she's a very good possibility because her whereabouts is unknown, her status is unknown, and honestly there is no fucking information about her. So yes, she could have been Spencer's right hand man. She could have easily took his place, and I'm sure she's not the only researcher who could have took his place who was mentioned in the earlier game. Okay, I apologize for taking 2 whole minutes to just rant about that, but if I run into something else like that when we're doing another character history video, I will mention it, and I'm sure I will. In Resident Evil 8, it is written that Bailey is Spencer's right-hand man. Well, in my head, I thought that maybe that's fucking stupid, I mentioned that in the last paragraph, but the theorist inside of me thought maybe this is somewhat of a hint. Maybe they're trying to tell us that Bailey is extremely secretive. Maybe even more secretive than Spencer. And one of the reasons why I came up with this conclusion, because when the BSAA investigated Bailey, they weren't able to find out much about him, his status, nor his whereabouts. And the reason I think Brandon Bailey is using this alias to keep leader of the Connection's identity a secret. And that's not the only reason I think Brandon Bailey is Mr. Simon. Why would they mention a character who was only brought up in Resident Evil 5 if he's not going to play a major role in the game? I also think that Brandon Bailey is a great possibility for Mr. Simon because he never made an appearance in any Resident Evil game, and what better game to make an appearance in than Resident Evil 9, and what better role to play than the villain. But even if Mr. Simon turns out not to be Brandon Bailey, and I think it's most likely that he's not Brandon Bailey is still going to play a major role in Resident Evil 9. The third possible answer I came up with, I already said at the beginning, is somewhat of a joke. But this is how I feel when I was writing this script, like everything was a joke. Mr. Simon could easily be another child of Albert Wesker, or the leader of Wesker's HCF who joined the Connections before Albert Wesker's death. Well, anyway, I said it 1,000 times, I recorded this video at night. I'm tired, I'm not really trying to do an outro, but you know a little more about Brandon Bailey and you'll understand why sometimes I just can't deal with Resident Evil. And the only reason I actually really made this video is because I was doing my Marcus video and I ran into Brandon Bailey and I was like, holy shit, I need to do a video on this guy. So this is technically a Brandon Bailey video and not a Mr. Simon video. I just added him in there. Also, if you like this video, I'm 100% sure you're gonna like the other videos on my channel. Just, you know, just click this right here and You still here?